Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Alliance webinar. You Be the Judge, the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act game. My name is Christine Beck. I do advocacy coordination at the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. Today is February 21st, 2022. And
Three.
or 23. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Let's not go back in time. Oh my goodness. Thank you
Let's not do that.
Thank you so much. You know, it takes a village. It really does. So yes, it takes a village. So again, February 21st, 2023. There are going to be a lot of opportunities during our time together for you to speak up and speak out. So you have choices. You could do it a couple different ways. You could type into the chat box and we will read it. You could take yourself off of mute and you could speak it out loud. Whatever way works best for you is what works best for you. We would, however, ask that you stay on mute unless you are actively speaking up and speaking out. That just helps everybody to be able to hear all the wonderful things that we are going to learn. The Alliance is so proud to be an initiative of the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. So now I'd like you to meet the presenter. Consuelo, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm working for Family Matters, and they're the Parent Training and Information Center in the state of Illinois. We cover the whole state outside of that Chicago region that's separate unto itself, as far as we're concerned. And then, so we cover all from Northern Illinois all the way down to Southern Illinois, like I said, outside of the Chicago region. We provide training and support on special education matters and anything that has to do with disabilities. And we're here to help parents understand what is all this special education, what is this disability stuff going on. And today I'm here to turn you all into judges.
Oh boy. So get ready. I hope everybody had their Wheaties and they are ready for this. So Consuelo, what do our judges need to know?
Okay, so just real briefly, I know that, I don't want you to have to go to law school for years and years and years and then pass the bar and all this, but just for these particular cases, this is some basic information, just really basic for you to know. So as you all know, the Americans with Disabilities Act is now over 30 years old, been around for a while, so most people are familiar with it in general ways. And basically the law says the Americans with Disability forbids discrimination, okay? And we're going to talk about that. Forbids discrimination against individuals with disabilities in many or various areas of life in the United States. So, judges, that's the key here. It forbids discrimination in many areas of life in the United States. And the discrimination we're talking about is against people with disabilities. And then the main other little thing you need to know is that even during COVID, the ADA was still the law. All right. So those are the basics, few little rules that we need to know. So judges, are you ready to hear the first case? So what we're going to do is we're going to present the case, and then you as the judges will have to decide the outcome of that case. You ready? Got your judges? I wish I had robes for everybody and
and a gavel
and everything, but we're just going to pretend, okay? Let's put on our judging hats and see what happens in this first case.
Well,
so go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. I was going to say, here's our first opportunity to speak up and speak out. And so, judges, what is discrimination? So the ADA is about discrimination. We don't want discrimination against people with disabilities. So when you hear the word discrimination or see the word, what do you think? What comes to mind? This is your opportunity to speak up and speak out. So you have choices. You can take yourself off of mute and speak out your ideas, or you can type them into the chat box. So again, judges, we need you. What is discrimination? And we'll wait for a few minutes for folks to chime in. Let me see. Has anybody said anything yet? Not really. All right. Anyone want to share what is discrimination? And you know what? It's okay if you don't know. We're here to learn with and from each other. This is an opportunity for us to learn as people, as self-advocates, and as judges. So if you don't know, no worries. We're all in it together learning. All right, so we have someone. Oh, thank you, Kimbra. It says denying someone an opportunity due to being considered different.
That's
Wow,
right.
that is
That's
amazing. Yeah.
That's a good definition, right?
Anybody else want to share before we move on and we just get a sense of when we hear the word discrimination, when we see the word discrimination, what does that mean? All right, we're going to go ahead.
So here's the case of Henry and his employer. So Henry has, these are the facts. Henry has a disability. Henry's employer is taking Henry's temperature before allowing him to work in the interest of protecting all its employees. Henry is the only employee that has his temperature taken before going to work. Everybody get that image in their mind?
Yes. And
Henry's the
yes, before we move on, Consuelo, someone shared a definition of discrimination. What does discrimination mean? And
okay.
Sally up at KCCDD, yes, access to places and opportunity in all areas of living. So she meant no access. So discrimination is not being able to access places and opportunities in all area of living. So thank you for that.
Those are good. Yeah, good discrimination. You've got it, judges. You're clicking
Yeah.
along here.
Yes. So again, just to recap what we've learned so far about Henry and the employer, Henry has a disability. Henry's employer is taking Henry's temperature before he goes into work in the interest of protecting all its employees. Henry is the only employee that is getting his temperature taken before going into work.
So the question, judges, is the employer discriminating against Henry?
What do you think? So is Henry's employer discriminating against him by only taking his temperature before coming into work and not anybody else's? Let us know what you think. This is your time as a judge to speak up and speak out. And we'll wait for a couple of seconds. Maybe you're with a group and the group's talking amongst itself and you're getting ready to type that in. Maybe you're with a group, your group's doing the talking, you're kind of weighing, what is this? Is this discrimination or not? All right, we've got someone chiming in. What do our judges say? Oh, Judge Kimbra says it appears that he is. Why just Henry?
Exactly. Exactly. Why just Henry?
Anybody else? Any of our other judges want to weigh in? Any of our other judges want to weigh in before our head judge, Consuelo, kind of gives us the 411, the information on this? All right. Well, and judges, if you're still typing in, no worries. We will get to your ruling. But so, Consuelo, is that employer discriminating against Henry?
Well, let me tell you what the employer's thinking was, okay? So the employer felt like Henry, because of his disability, was kind of the weak link in his employment population, right? He felt that because he had a disability, he was more likely to get sick and not know it, right? And get everybody else sick in his company. And so he felt like he had to protect his company, and in order to do that, he only took Henry's temperature. Now that's his defense. I want you to know he had a defense. He wasn't, he had a reason for why he picked on, or I shouldn't say picked on, but why he only chose Henry is to protect his workforce, right? He wanted to protect his workforce, and it's his way of thinking. The person with the disability was more likely than anyone else in his employ to get sick and to spread the sickness to other employees. And so that's why he chose Henry.
All right. Let's see. I think some other judges.
Yeah, some judge came.
Well, no, here's something else from a judge. But what about those with hidden disabilities like heart disease and diabetes?
Excellent point, right? So that's why, coming back, all right. So you judges, you're thinking the right way. So what about these people who had, obviously Henry had an obvious disability because that's what the employer was seeing. But, right? So that's why exactly this case is discrimination, because how could he possibly know, right? Why couldn't he do every employee, right? He should have been doing every employee, or he should have been requesting some kind of, okay, if you have a hidden disability, let's make sure you're okay, or something to make it more non-discriminatory, right? We're not picking on just the people with disabilities. We're trying to have a safe and healthy workplace, and this is how we're going to do it without discriminating, right? So that very good point. It's these hidden disabilities. We have to protect everyone, even though we don't know that they have a disability, right? If that's your true goal, then there's another way to do it without discriminating. So very good point, judges. You're right. You're thinking right on.
All right. So now you know how it's going to go. So here we go with some more cases. We want to make sure that we get through all of our cases during our time together.
All right, so the next case, here we go. This is the case of Sonia and the grocery store. Sonia likes how the local grocery store looks and the way the employees are treated. Sonia decides to apply for a job at the store. Sonia has a visual disability and is not able to use a regular computer. The computers at the grocery store do not have the adaptive equipment that Sonia needs. Sonia leaves the store without applying for a job. Later, Sonia decides that grocery store discriminated against her.
And so judges, speak up and speak out. Did the grocery store discriminate against Sonia? So what do you think? Did the grocery store discriminate against Sonia? Now's your time to rule. Go ahead, type it into the chat box. You can even take yourself off of mute and speak out your decision. But did the grocery store discriminate against Sonia? She wants to work there. She likes it. They don't have the type of cash register system that she can use. She leaves, she goes home. Later on, she says, they discriminated against me. And now it's before you as the judges. So speak up and speak out. Did the grocery store discriminate against Sonia? What do you think? All right. Do any of our judges want to weigh in? You may be talking with the other judges. They're with you, deciding on your ruling. All right. And we have, all right. Thank you, Judge. It seems like they could have put her in a different position other than checkout or made modifications. All right. So that was a judge's ruling. Seems like they could have done something different. So, Consuelo, go ahead and share what happened in this case.
Oh, and that's the other thing I needed to say, right? Some of these are real cases I've just kind of abbreviated and changed the names and changed the locations and everything to protect the innocent and the guilty. But anyway, Sonia, all right, you need to think about this. Sonia went into the store to apply for this position, checked it all out, realized she couldn't because they didn't have the equipment she needed, and walked out. Did Sonia notify the grocery store before she left? Did they even know she was coming in to apply for a job?
I don't think so. It sounds like she walked in. I'd like to work here, saw that I don't think I can, and she left.
Right. Somebody said no. Right. She just left. Right. And so what did the other judge say? What was the other judge's point?
Oh, that, well, a couple of judges have weighed in.
That they could have, right? The judge said they could have modified something.
Mm-hmm. And then we just had some other judges up in Galesburg say, no, she didn't say anything. Oh,
right.
And here's another judge said she should have been equipped to self-advocate and ask them to hear her out.
Right. That's it. There it is, Judge. You've got it, right? The point is, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the burden, and that means like the person with the disability has the burden, has the obligation, has the responsibility to speak up and ask for an accommodation. It's not up to the grocery store to be seeking out people with disabilities and say, can I help you? Do you need something? How can I help you? No. The Americans with Disabilities made it very clear, the act made it very clear that it's the person with the disability. They have to speak up and speak out. No one else is going to do it for them. They have to be the ones who raise their voice and say, hey, I want to do this, but I need a little help. I need an accommodation. Can you do this for me? Or see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you all have identified a basic principle of the Americans with Disabilities Act, judges. You just hit on it. The person with the disability has the obligation, the responsibility, and the burden to speak up. Right?
Yes.
And what somebody said, yeah, not all disabilities are exactly, not all disabilities are obvious. So those people really have to, if they want an accommodation, and we'll talk more about accommodation, but if they want something changed or different, whatever, they're going to have to say something.
All right, let's check out our next case. Judges, I hope you're ready. This isn't a case. This is a question that kind of goes with our last case. So, is it fair that people with disabilities have to speak up? What do you think, judges? Is it fair that we, as people with disabilities who need accommodations, have to speak up? Yes or no? What do you think? Is it fair? All right, we've got some of our judges. Oh, thank you.
You should all speak up.
That's right. Thank you, judges from Galesburg. Yes, and we have some other judges.
Everyone has to know how to speak up for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of go back and forth on this. I would love to live in a world where the world existed and people with disabilities faced no barriers, right?
Mhm.
They would face no barriers where they could move through and get every opportunity, access every service, access everything that they wanted without having, right, to have that added burden. Oh, you have a disability, and now we're going to add this other thing. You have to talk, you have to speak up and let us know what you want and what you need, right? It would be nice if it was the flip side, right? That people with disabilities would just be able to move freely with no barriers through our environment, through our world, through our workplaces, through our stores, through everything. But it's just not that way. And so the law was set up so that people with disabilities were more or less forced to speak up and speak out. And if they didn't, then they would be losing their opportunities. Just like Sonia, she lost that opportunity, right? She just walked out, didn't apply, didn't speak up, just lost that opportunity. And judges like yourselves have decided, well, the company didn't discriminate. There's no discrimination here if the person with the disability doesn't do what they're supposed to do and speak
Mhm.
up.
Yes.
So I don't know if you think that's fair or not, but that's what the Americans, that's what, how it's run, right? That's, there's no disability police.
Yes.
And I also want you to know, yeah, there's no disability police looking for people who are discriminating. The other part of this is that under the Americans Disabilities Act, there is no funding, right? There's no funding for uh, for the Americans to put in place anti-discrimination, right? There's no funding behind it. People are just businesses, the public entities are just supposed to do it as a matter of doing their business. And so again, it's the the burden is on the people with disabilities to speak up and speak out.
Yes, and before we go to our next case, one of our judges up at KCCDD in Galesburg said, when we speak up, it puts the ball in their court. Absolutely. All right,
Right.
let's check out this next one.
And that's exactly how the law wanted it to work. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whew. All right. Moving on. Judges, this is the case of Olivia and All Eyes. Olivia has a disability and is in a transition program. And through the transition program, Olivia has been approved to participate in an unpaid internship with a computer security company called All Eyes. Everyone at All Eyes is allowed to take one break during their 4-hour shift. Because of her disability, Olivia needs to take 2 breaks during her shift. When Olivia asked her supervisor at All Eyes to provide her with a second break, the supervisor said to her, "This is a workplace, not a kindergarten." Olivia became upset and decided that she could no longer continue her internship.
All right, judges, you heard about this case, and now it's time for you to speak up and speak out and weigh in on your ruling. Is All Eyes discriminating against Olivia by not giving her 2 breaks that she has asked for? Again, judges, your time to speak up and speak out with your ruling. Is All Eyes discriminating against Olivia? Let us know. Type your ruling into the chat box. And again, as Consuelo said, these are all real cases. These are things that have happened. They might even continue to be happening. But getting the information, and for us as self-advocates and as judges, knowing what to look for, knowing what our rights are, so important. So again, judges, let us know. Is All Eyes discriminating against Olivia? And we'll take a couple seconds. So, and that's all it takes for our judges to weigh in. Thank you. We have a judge in Centralia who said, again, modifications should be made and she should be allowed to have that second break. All right. Thank you, Judge. And here's another judge weighing in. I would think that an extra break is no different than accommodating. Yes, they are discriminating. And another judge, Chris, it is a medical need. Wow, with all that information, Consuelo, how did this turn out?
Well, everyone is correct. If someone needs an extra break, right? Sometimes the company will ask for something reasonable, right? If you're asking for something reasonable, and sometimes the company can ask the person who's asking for this accommodation to provide some medical backup, like, why do you need this extra break? It's pretty reasonable to ask that from the company's point of view. Why do you need this? And then it's up to the company and the person with the disability to kind of work out how we're going to make this work for us, right? Because the company is there not to give people with disabilities accommodations, right? Why is the company existing? To make money, right? They're not there to make accommodations. They're there to make money. So if it's reasonable and it's okay, and we discussed it, and somebody said it's medically necessary. One of the judges pointed out it's medically necessary for her in order to keep, and it's not going to cost, how much is it going to cost the company, right? And so the other point of view, though, is, all right, but the company, you go to work, they're trying to make money, even if this isn't an unpaid internship, they're still trying to make money. They're doing training. But so they could be flexible about what time she enters to make up the time, or what time she leaves to make up the time. She's just asking for a second break during her work hours. So the work hours can be flexible, right? She could come in a little early, get that second break in, but still make up her work hours. And it hasn't cost the company a dime.
All right.
But I do think that sometimes companies can and should ask for, is this do you really need this? Is this something you really need? And maybe they will require you to have like a medical note, a doctor's note, something written, right? So that they can put it in their records. Why are they giving you this extra break? Kind of thing. They don't have to discuss it with everybody in the room, but just, because it's confidential. But you may be required to give some kind of information about your disability and why you need that. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody, judges?
So be prepared for that. If you are going to ask for a modification or an accommodation, be prepared for an employer to ask, maybe for some documentation. Oops. And so that leads us into this next speak up and speak out. We heard it called modification. Some people know it as accommodation. So judges, what say you? What's an accommodation? How would you define that? What words would you use? What is an accommodation? Because what Olivia was asking for was an accommodation for that extra break. So what are your ideas? What is an accommodation? All right. I hope you all are talking amongst yourselves. Sometimes as judges, we have to work together to kind of talk through things and come out with an answer. So again, judges, what is an accommodation? All right. What is an accommodation?
We've had some very good judge participation here.
I mean to tell you. I mean to tell you, this is great. Okay. One of our judges is weighing in. Making a change or changes that helps one work better or more easily. Thank you.
Very good. Yes.
Here's another judge. It's a way to address needs that helps both get the job done, both the employee and the employer. Wow, those are some
Those are very good.
Yeah,
Very good. You
yeah,
got it, judges. You got it.
yes, yes. Okay. So let's check out our next case. Or, my goodness,
First,
I'm getting ahead of myself.
I
You
wanted
judge.
to make, I put this in because I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that we all understood what we're talking about under the ADA is a reasonable accommodations. And I want you to understand accommodation and modification are two very different things. An accommodation, as one judge already said, it's a change, right? It's some kind of change that allows a person with a disability to enjoy equal employment and other life opportunities. And accommodation is reasonable if it does not create undue hardship, which means doesn't cost a lot of money, or a direct threat to someone else, right? So basically, that's the Americans with Disabilities law. It has to be a reasonable accommodation, and you're just making a little change. Now, modification, that's really something totally different. A modification is not a little change, it's a big change. And generally speaking, in the employment world, we're not going to modify a person's job, just like we're not going to modify a college course. We're going to provide accommodations, reasonable accommodations, but we're not going to change the job itself. That's something different. But we are going to provide reasonable accommodations. And they've done studies about these reasonable accommodations, and they're finding that most accommodations cost a company less than $500. Most of them are free. Most of them are just about being creative about how we manage our time. And as we all know, during COVID, everyone went virtual. And so all of these accommodations were even made more easy, right? Everything went virtual. And so people realize, hey, there's a whole lot of things we could be doing about how we can reasonably accommodate things in our workplaces. So I just want you to understand, but a modification is quite different. If you go into the company and ask for a modification of your job, you're probably not going to get it. You're not going to get it. You can get a reasonable accommodation, but you're not going to get a modification. Okay. Does that everybody got that? Modifications mean you're changing big things, and we're only talking about little changes, okay, in a
Okay.
reasonable accommodation. All right, so we can
Wow.
go.
Yes. As judges, we are learning a lot today.
Okay, let's go to the next case. Uh, and I want you to know if you feel uh, emotional about this case, it's okay. Okay, it's meant to be. All right. So the case of Peter in the warehouse. Peter has a disability. He works at the warehouse doing routine janitorial work like mopping the floors. There's a large crew of people at work who often take away his mop or broom. They do not do this to anyone else. Peter has told the crew to stop. Peter has told his supervisor about the crew interfering with his work. The supervisor told Peter that the crew people are just teasing and to ignore them and to do his job. Peter no longer feels comfortable on the job and is thinking about quitting.
All right, judges. So now it's your time to weigh in. We'd like you to speak up and speak out. Is the warehouse discriminating against Peter? Again, judges, is the warehouse discriminating against Peter? We'll let you have a moment to talk about that, to form your decision, and then to share that decision. Again, you heard about Peter and what he is experiencing at the warehouse. All
Chris said,
right.
yeah.
Oh, thank you, Chris, our judge Chris. He said yes. Anyone else want to weigh in? All right, we've got another judge weighing in. Our judges from KCCDD in Galesburg said that is harassment. Yes. All right. Other judges, would you like to weigh in? And if you do, we'd love to hear from you before Consuelo tells us what happened in this particular case. All right, so Consuelo, go ahead and share what happened in this particular case. If any of our judges weigh in while you're doing that, we will share when you conclude how things went.
Okay, great. So I didn't.
Oh,
Okay, so
hey, yes, in the nick of time. Thank you, Judge Kimbra. Anyone who is feeling uncomfortable at work because of others, there is a problem that needs addressing. There should at least be a policy in place to prevent this. Yes, workplace bullying, workplace harassment has no place in our workplaces. Thank you.
right, and based on disability, right? It was based on his disability. He was kind of picked on, right? Obviously picked on by his co-workers. And the critical thing that made the warehouse liable, it's one thing if employees, like they do tease each other, you're a friendly workplace, everybody, gets along and things are happening. That's one thing. But Peter reported this to his supervisor. So the supervisor was aware, and as somebody said, one of the judges said, there should have been a policy in place. Once an employee complains about harassment to their supervisor, that supervisor should have gone up and up above him, right? Everybody works for somebody else in companies, and so something should have happened, right? Some change should have occurred, but nothing happened here. The supervisor just told Peter, oh, they're just teasing you, just go back to work, don't worry about it. So that's critical here, and this is an actual case. So Peter did report it to the supervisor, and that's what made the company itself liable, right, for discrimination. And so what this is usually called, and this is not just, I made the facts simple, but there was a lot of harassing going on, including like, blocking Peter into the bathroom or into a closet, doing all kinds of things to just, which they thought was funny, but not, right? It was harassment. And the judges in that case talked about this rose to the level of what they called a toxic work environment or a hostile work environment. Those are two terms that are used in discrimination cases about workplace. A workplace can become hostile, right? Can be a place where the person doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel like they're afraid, right? If they turn their back to somebody, somebody's going to do something to them. And so the workplace can become a hostile work environment or what they call toxic, right? Raises to the level of actually toxic, where the person has physical reactions to being at work, being harassed. And so this case, I put this in there because I wanted you to understand the burden with Peter is not, there was stuff going on, but what made the warehouse responsible is that Peter reported it. If Peter hadn't reported to the supervisor and just quit without making that report, then he wouldn't have had a discrimination case. Does that make sense? He had to have reported it to someone above his station, his supervisor, somebody, to make the company responsible. Again, if Peter had just walked off the job, it would have been like Sonia back, who never applied for the job. Yeah, you quit for your own private reasons. We're not responsible for why you quit. So that always in the back of your mind when you do these kind of cases is, did the person with disability report it to somebody?
Yes. So being a self-advocate and reporting that. All right. Let's see.
And I wanted you to know that there is, in discrimination, right, in workplace, it can be hostile, it can be toxic. So those are words that I wanted you to have as part of your judge training there.
All right, we
Okay.
have a couple more that we want to get through, so we are going to move our judge's self along.
Okay. So this is the case of Michael in the pizzeria. Oh, did he win the case? Yes, he did, because he did report it to the supervisor. If he hadn't, he would have lost his case. So yes, he in the real case he did. And in the real case, like I said, it was the treatment of him was much, much worse, right? Anyway. All right, let's talk about Michael. Michael is applying for a chef job at the pizzeria. The job application asks if Michael has a disability. Michael does have a disability, but he does not want to answer the question truthfully. He also does not want to lie and say no. Michael thinks the pizzeria should not ask about disabilities on the job application.
All right, judges, what say you? Can the pizzeria ask about disability on the job application? What do you think? Weigh in on this. So again, judges, speak up and speak out. Can the pizzeria ask about disability on the job application? What do you think? And I hope our judges are carefully considering this particular case. Again, can the pizzeria ask about disability on the job application? All right, let's see.
No. Personal experience here.
Yes, Judge Chris says no, but he has seen that a lot. Consuelo, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to tell about this case. Well, one of our
Already
judges.
said.
All right. I think it might be illegal to ask this, but it would be in his interest to divulge this information. All right. Okay. And judges up at KCCDD said, I believe they can ask if you need accommodation. So tell us about this case.
Okay, in this case, and this is, you all just raised some good points. So here's the thing. You cannot ask on a job application whether a person has a disability. That is an illegal question. And if you find that question on the application, you don't have to answer it. You can just ignore it, right? And then, if you want to, you can submit that application, try to get a copy of it and submit it to the EEOC for them to make that determination that job application is discriminating. So when can an employer ask if you have a disability?
All right.
When can the employer ask?
Okay, yes.
They really can't ask. What they can ask you is, right, the essential job duties. Can you lift 50 pounds? Can you walk for 5 hours without a break? Can you bend your knees? They can ask specific questions about the job itself, but they can't ask you, do you have a disability? No, they can't do that, but they can ask specific questions about the job, essential duties of the job. Can you lift so many pounds? Can you stand so many hours? Can you walk so many steps? Can you raise your arms? These are all essential job duties. They can ask you that, but they can't ask you if you have a disability, right? So then where does this accommodation thing come up? Well, once you have the job, and you can do, and of course you're going to be answering, yes, I can do the essential duties of the job. Of course I can. If you can't do the essential duties of the job, then you shouldn't be applying for it, right? If you can't do the job, don't lie. You're going to get in major trouble, right? So once you have the essential duties of the job down and you can do them, now you get the accommodations. All right. Once a month, the person with the disability is or the job itself is asked to move something that's not really part of their duties on a daily basis, but once a month. That you can ask for an accommodation for, right? It's not your job duty every day, but like once a month, something comes up and you're supposed to do that. You can ask for an accommodation for that part of the job that you can't do. You can do all the essential duties. There's just this one little part that you can't do. Do you understand? So they shouldn't be asking on the initial job application. The only thing they should be asking you at an interview or on the application is, can you do the job? That's what's critical.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Now, I know we've been talking about employment, and now we're going to branch out a little bit from employment to this particular case.
Okay, so this is the case of Tom and Mega Cart. Mega Cart is a huge store that has just about everything you could want, including food and clothes. Tom has a physical disability and wants to use the Mega Mart's mobile shopping cart. Whenever Tom goes to the Mega Mart, the mobile shopping carts are out of order and no employees are ever able to help him shop. Tom believes that Mega Mart is discriminating against him.
All right. So, judges, weigh in here. Is Tom being discriminated against by Mega Mart? They have carts, but they're not working. And
they never work.
Never work. They're just, I don't know, gathering dust. And nobody's helping him. Nobody's around to help him. So what do you think? Is Mega Mart discriminating against Tom? Oh, what do you think? Is Mega Mart discriminating against Tom? He wants to shop there. You can get everything there, but he's having difficulty doing that. And I know as soon as I ask Consuelo to share about the outcome, one of our judges is going to weigh in. But I'm going to go ahead because we have this case and then one more. So Consuelo, would you go ahead and share what happened?
I think we have two more, but all right. Okay. So in Mega Mart's case, okay, so basically Tom won this case. The store was found to be discriminating against people with disabilities because they falsely, right? Once you open your doors to the public, you open your doors to everyone, including people with disabilities, and you should be able to accommodate them. It's part of doing business. People with disabilities know how to spend money, and they like to spend money. And so if you are putting out these cards, it's kind of false advertising, right? That you're accommodating when in reality, you're not accommodating because you never ever have these cards working and you never provide employees to help people. So they were found to be discriminating. If you have carts like this for the public to use, then you have to keep them in working order. Otherwise, you're just kind of, fake, like you're doing accommodations, which is what they were doing. It was just fake, a fake accommodation, and they weren't in reality really being accommodating to people with disabilities. So they were found to discriminate. Tom won the case. Okay, moving on. So this is also based on a real case. This is the case of Michelle and the city police. Michelle has both a physical disability and a mental health diagnosis. And Michelle is arrested by the city police. During the arrest, Michelle asked the police to handcuff her hands in front instead of behind her. The police ignore Michelle's request and handcuffs her hands behind her back, even though she tells the police she has a disability. The police tell Michelle it doesn't matter if she has a disability, and they're going to do their job and arrest her.
And so, judges, in this case, Michelle against the city police, did the police discriminate against Michelle? Michelle knew she was going to be arrested. She asked the police to handcuff her in front of her because of her disability. And the city police said, nope, we're going to do our job and handcuff you the way we are going to handcuff you. What do you think? All right. And Judge Chris said, no, they did not discriminate against Michelle. And I know you have another question, Chris. We'll cover that at the end. Judges, any other opinions or rulings out there? Did the police discriminate against Michelle? And Consuelo, I'll have you start to answer that case. And of course, then somebody,
Yeah.
Judge Kimbra said the police.
And Judge Kimber she's
Yes.
absolutely right in terms of that's exactly what the police defense was. We're following protocol. We know what we're doing. We have to maintain law and order in the community. This is how we do it. We don't have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act when we do an arrest of a citizen. And Judge, but that's what the police defense was. But it came down to no, police, like any other public agency, has to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. And now in this particular case, the police knew this is not the first time the police have had interactions with Michelle. So they knew she had a disability because of the mental health condition that she had. And so they knew she had a disability, and they went ahead and ignored her request, and Michelle won her case that they did discriminate against her. And so now police, their defense, as the judge said, was we do our protocol. We have to arrest people to be safe for us and safe for them. But under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the police have to follow a reasonable accommodation and make that, make the arrest in an appropriate, reasonable way under the Americans with Disabilities Act. They have to follow the act. So I know, that the police were not happy with this case, but the judges said, if the person tells you, and as we all know, this has happened in reality, right? This is not just off the wall case. This is real. If you tell the police you have a disability and that they shouldn't do this, whatever it is that they're doing, they have to stop. So that's one of the cases under the Americans with Disabilities. The police have to follow Americans with Disabilities, and if the person requests or tells them, right, that they have a disability and police shouldn't be doing that, then they should not be doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you to Judge Kimbra for saying, wow, and now I know. As judges, as people, as self-advocates, we're always learning. And so this is part of our learning process. This is the last one.
This is our last case. All right. So the case of Sam in voting, again, this is a real case. I won't tell you what state. Sam has a disability and is not able to write. A new voting law says that Sam needs to vote in front of a traveling board. And a traveling board are people who witness a person who's voting if the person is unable to write. And Sam believes that he should have a way to vote without voting in front of a traveling board.
And so, judges, here's our final case. We want you to speak up and speak out. Weigh in. Are Sam's voting rights being discriminated against because he has to vote in front of a traveling board? Are Sam's voting rights being discriminated against because he's required to vote in front of a traveling board? Consuelo, I'm going to go ahead and have you start sharing what the outcome of this case was. Oh, see, I know. All right.
Right, that judge.
Thank you, Kimbra. Judge Kimbra said his rights are being violated against, and Judge Chris says, I don't think so. And you know what? Judges are people. We all see things differently, right? So why don't you share what actually happened?
So in this case, what actually happened was that these traveling boards, they put it into the law, and then the people who couldn't write were being asked to call the county clerk's office and say, I need a traveling board. Well, what happened was none of the traveling boards would show up. They were, people were not being allowed to vote. And so the courts did find that this law was discriminatory, and that there are other ways to protect, the voting without having to discriminate or taking away a person's right to vote, which is basically what they were doing. They were taking away the person's right to vote. And so there's other less restrictive ways of protecting the voting without having to have these boards come in and look at the person while they vote. So it was discrimination.
All right, let's see. Oh, thank you,
Yes.
judges. Our state has machines that mark your ballot for you, and we do require 2 judges to help at the polls. So yes, Illinois does have that.
Yeah, this case did not come from Illinois, obviously.
So if you want to learn more about the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, you can go to the ADA National Network. They have all kinds of resources, guidance, and training. You can also check out the ADA Great Lakes Center to learn more. So I'm going just to move past questions, comments, and considerations. We do have one we want to share. We want to say a big thank you to Consuelo for helping us think through the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it impacts us, whether it's employment or outside of employment. You can reach Consuelo at the email address or at the phone number that's listed. And just a bit about the Alliance. We have an email, a website. You can find us and like us if you're on social media and Facebook, or you can check us out at our YouTube channel. Judge Kimbra says, thank you, very informative and helpful. Now, here's a question from one of our judges. And this goes back to employment. And Judge Chris said, I have a question. Can they interview if they don't have a position? You think they have a position, but they don't really have a position. So is that discrimination?
No, I don't think. I mean, unless something else is going on. I mean, companies can, take resumes, take interviews. Maybe they're building up whatever. They're building up information that they have. They don't necessarily have to have a position open in order to do interviews. Could be a lot of reasons why they're interviewing people. Unless it's for unless you think it's for some discriminatory reason that they're interviewing people, there could be a lot of reasons why they're just like building up data or collecting data or whatever. I'm not sure. Do you have an idea of why they would be doing job interviews without actually having a job available?
And that is a great question. And Chris, if you want to connect with Consuelo offline after this presentation, that would be amazing. Oh, hold on a second. Here we go. So Chris sounds like he applied for the job, and maybe there were some things with interviews. I would say go ahead, and I can connect you to, and perhaps you could talk through that particular situation. We have reached the end of our time together. And again, thank you to our head judge, Consuelo Puente from Family Matters Parent Training and Information Center. So appreciate you bringing this information to us. I thought I knew about the ADA, but now I'm seeing it in a different light because of this. Thanks to each of you who joined us today. Thank you for being judges and learning right along with and from us. I hope you continue to connect with the Illinois Self-Advocacy Alliance. And always, always remember to speak up and speak out. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.